Hello again. In this lesson, we're going to learn a new function, our second function, which is the type function. Variables and the data they represent have a specific data type. For example, let's define three variables. The variable name, which will be John, the variable favnum, which will be 13, and the variable tax rate, which will equal 0.4. Each variable here represents a different type of information. The type function returns the type of information represented by the variable. So for example, our type function right here takes one argument, the variable name for what we would like to determine the type of. So I could determine the the data type of the variable name. And I'm going to send that to the print function. So I want to print that. If I run this right now, we see that name is a class and it's a string. Wonderful. Exactly what we expect because John here, the value of name, is stored inside of quotes. And so let's call a similar command here. Let's call the print function. Let's pass it an argument. And let's pass it the return value of the type function. And let's pass favnum. And let's do the similar thing here, for tax rate. And so let's see, what are these data types? And what we see is, hopefully you kind of knew this ahead of time. We have a string, an integer, and a float. Now, there are built-in functions, other built-in functions that allow us to change the data type of a variable. And this process is known as casting a variable from one type or another. We have the following functions at our disposal: the string function, str, the int function, int, or the float function. And what we need to do is each of these functions take one argument, the value in which you want to change its data type. So this is like the information whose data type you want to change. Now we can permanently change the data type by updating the variable using the assignment operator. So for example, let's take tax rate and update its value. So I can say tax rate is now equal to, and I want to turn this tax rate from a float into a string. So I'll call the string function, str, and I'll pass the current value of the tax rate. Now, if I print the data type of the tax rate, what we get is a string right here. So it's saying, hey, the tax rate variable is no longer a float, but instead it is the string representation of this value. So that permanently changes it. We can also temporarily cast a data to a new type if we don't use the assignment operator. For example, I can print a message here. We'll say name dot, and I'll call the title method, name.title plus apostrophe s. So John's favorite number is, right now if I just type favnum, and then we'll put a period. If I run this right now, it looks like I have name, which is a string, plus another string right here, plus favnum, which we know is an integer. So Python's going to have a hard time interpreting what this plus sign means. Does it mean to concatenate, or does it mean to mathematically add? And if we run this, we see that error, right? The error is occurring here on line 14, and it says, hey, this is a type error. We can only concatenate strings, not integers, to strings. So I can temporarily cast our data. So what we're going to do is call inside of our print function the string function, str, and we're going to cast the integer value favorite num to a string. This is going to only do it temporarily. John's favorite number is 13, works out perfectly. But if we just check really quick, if I still print the type of favnum, we should see that it's still an integer. So let's just verify this. Yep, and we still have an integer. So another way, and I think we kind of highlighted this, another way to print is just to use commas as separate values and let Python worry about the casting. So if I say print name.title, comma, Uh, favorite number is, comma, favnum, comma, period. This should work perfectly fine. And we're using the default separator space. Oh, so if you look here, I kind of got, this is a little awkward because we're using that default space operator, but that's okay for right now. That's all right. Now again, I think for learning, I prefer the method here because it forces us to be more aware of data types. And this is going to be a crucial skill for debugging more complicated code later on. So just to prove, again, that we only temporarily casted favorite number to a string, not permanently, let's try to do some arithmetic. So let's do fav number. Let's create a new variable. Let's call it added value equals, let's say fav number plus, let's add 5 to it, plus 5. And then let's print added value. So hopefully this mathematical result should still work because we're adding an integer to another integer. And if we run this and test this, it works perfectly. In fact, mathematically, this works out nice. 5 plus 13 does, in fact, give us 18. So the type function is a great tool, a great function to help us determine what data type we're working with. And then the string, ints, and float functions can help us cast one variable type to another.